Okay, I hope everybody's doing well. Good evening to everybody. Um, Tonight I wanted to do basically what is the Haftarah turns out to be the Haftorah of the last of the seven of Nechemta, the last of the seven of consolation from Tisha B'Av until Rosh Hashanah. Because after this one, usually in the calendar, there's usually Shabbos Shuvah, etc. So the last one is starts in the end of chapter 61. Uh, the rabbis decided to start it there. Sos asis ba Donai tagel nafshi be'elokai. It's chapter 61, verse 10, Parak Samach Aleph Pasuk Yud. And just to understand in terms of the connection to the previous section that we completed 2 weeks ago. So if you if you remember, in the last section, there was a Nevuat Nechama. There was a prophecy of consolation to the Avalei Tzion, which seems to be a distinct unit of people who mourned Zion. Later on in history, they become associated with special practices above and beyond the regular mourning, and maybe it already has its roots after the first Churban. There were people who took upon themselves extra special mourning, and God turns to them, and He speaks about in verse. If you look in chapter 61, verse, for example, I think verse 3, where God says, Yom nakam le'elokenu lenachem kol avelim. God is going to come and comfort all those who are mourning. Again, this seems to be right after the Churban Habayit, right after the destruction of the temple, maybe right before the great Nevuah of Cyrus, the great fall of Babel has come, or maybe even right afterwards, but people are still mourning and don't see the future. And it says there, Latet lahem pe'er tachat efer, to give in place of pe'er, in place of afer, in place of ashes and mourning, there's going to be pe'er. There's going to be glory on their head. Shemen sason tachat evel, tachat evel. Ma'ate tehila tachat ruach. You'll be wrapped. Ma'ate. You'll be wrapped. V'korei lahem elei hatzedek. And they will be now called Elei Hatzedek. And so you have here this introduction that you're going to be clothed in a new kind of clothing, ma'atehu tihila. Number two, the fact that there's going to be pe'er tachat efer, there's going to be glory in place of the ashes that you experience, there's going to be glory. And in place of the name that you had until now, you're going to be called Elei Hatzedek. And then later on, they're going to be called other thing. Va'atem, couple of pesukim later, Va'atem Kohanei Adonai Tikareu. You shall be called the priests of the Lord. The nations of the world who once looked down upon you are now going to see you as the mediators between the word of God and the reality and the message. Va'atem koneim tikareu mishartei Eloheinu yeyamer lachem. You will be known as the mishartei Elokeinu. So all these elements, so to speak, come up in this chapter that we looked at last week. Now we turn to our chapter this week, which is the conclusion of chapter 61, and you'll see that there is chapter 61 into 62, is a continuation of some of those themes. It's a playing off of some of those themes. That's part of why probably there's a connection between these two things, and you'll see certain words repeat themselves, certain ideas repeat themselves, again, being taken in a different direction, but it's again part of the literary editing of the final product that whenever these nivuot were given, were they given in spans of weeks, months, years, but they were collected together for literary reasons, put together. So the text now will speak after this nivuat hanechama to the Evelei Tzion, those who are mourning. It goes one step further. Sos asis badonai tagel nafshi birushalayim. Again, who is saying this? If you look in the Parshanut, um, it's either a reference to Jerusalem being personified, or it's a reference to the people, or it's a reference to the prophet. Again, those are kind of the three standard options that you always find in the various commentaries. So Sosasis Adonai, I will take joy in the Lord. Okay, I will be happy. Tagel nafshi be'elokai, ki he'll bishani bigdei yesha. He has clothed me in clothing of yesha, of salvation. Mi'il tzedakah ye'atani. He has surrounded me in a cloak of tzedakah. And again, as we've seen many times in the book of this part of the book of Isaiah, the second half, the word tzedakah is a synonym for the word Yeshua. Okay, so ki he'll bishani bigdei yesha mi'il tzedakah ye'atani. And again, you had that word ye'atani, which reminds us of the previous chapter, which spoke about that God will, in place of the Ruach Keha, in place of the downtrodden spirit, Ma'atei Tehillah, he will envelop us in glory and Tehillah and thanksgiving and praise. Kechatan Yechahen Pe'er, so he will, again, the play on a couple of themes that we had in the previous chapter. First of all, the word lichahen, which usually means to serve, but it also means to act, to play the role. Kechatan yichahen pe'er, just like the chatan wears pe'er, the chachala te'adeh keleha, and like the kala who wears her keleha, like the kala who wears her jewelry, her finery, whatever term you want to use. Obviously, it's a nice little play on words. Kala, keleha. The kala wears keleha. The kala wears her keleha. So I'm sorry I didn't put the text in front of you, but I assumed you had a Tanakh. But here's the text for those. Again, sosa sis badunai. Let's make this go away. Okay, the pictures. I don't need the pictures right now. So sis badunai tagel nafshi be'elohai kihil bishani bigdei yesha mi'il tzedakah yatani. Again, as I said, this connects back to lasum la'evelei tzion latet lahem pe'er tachat efer, which of course pe'er pei aleph resh, efer aleph pei resh, which is a nice play, and shemen sason tachat evel, ma'atei tehillah tachat ruach keah. So you'll be clothed with tehillah. V'korei lahem elei hatzedek mata Adonai lehit pa'er. And here, so sasis ba'Adonai tagalam shibelai kil bishani bigdei yesha mi'il tzedakah ye'atani. He has clothed me with a mi'il tzedakah kechatan yechahen pe'er. As the chatan who clothes himself, and he wears glory like a kohen, kichatan yichahen peher, like the chatan who acts in his role as a chatan wearing a pe'er. In the ancient world, they actually, in many cultures, including in Jewish cultures, they wore, just like the many kalot today wear some sort of, I don't know what to call it, a doodad on their hair, on their as a special kind of sign. So too in the ancient world, the Chatan would wear some sort of crown, some sort of atara. In fact, the Gemara talks about that at a certain point, the rabbis made a gezerah, that after the Churban, that the Kohanim should no longer wear the atarot. It was a gezerah to show mourning. And so that's what it's referencing here. Kechatan yichahen pe'er. So the redemption is going to be, there's going to be such joy, tagel nafshi, as the Chatan when he puts on his glory, his pe'er, his probably a reference to some sort of crown, which of course is beautiful because it's lasum levelei tzion latet lem pe'er tachat ever. Here you have the loving relationship metaphor. Kechatan yichayim v'chachala te'adeh chelea. Ki cha'aretz totzi tzimcha uchgana zeruah tatzmiach. Kein Adonai Elohim yatzmiach tzedakah utila neged kol hagoyim. So 3 times the word litzmoach, the growth that will emerge from the land of Israel. Ki cha'aretz totzi tzimcha uchgana zeruah tatzmiach. Kein Adonai Eloheinu. Just as the land will give forth its fruit and its beauty, and in the previous section, it spoke about the fact, that the land would be rebuilt, and vamdu zarim v'ra'ut zonechem uvnei nechar ikarechem v'chormechem. They will be your farmers and those who take care of your kramim, those who take care of your vineyards. V'atem kohanei Adonai tikareu mishartei Eloheinu. And this is what they're going to do. V'noda bagoyim zaram etzatzem b'toch hamim, etc. So here, ki cha'aretz totzi tzimcha u'chagana zereh tatzmiach kein Adonai Eloheinu yatzmiach tzedakah u'tihila neged kol hagoyim. So he will bring forth glory and salvation in front of all the nations of the world. They'll all see it. Now we continue with this theme of salvation with 2 more little nivuot. And here again, it's unclear who's speaking, but again, is it God being referred to in this verse? Is it the prophet? Most people today, will assume that it's a reference to the prophet. And he says, Lema'an Tzion lo echasheh. Now the word echasheh in biblical Hebrew, lachashot, sometimes has the connotation of to be silent. That's the way it's used today. Sometimes you see it in posters. Leman Tzion lo echasheh. For the sake of Zion, I will not be silent. Now, of course, the word echasheh, of course, has that connotation, but it also has the connotation of action, of not being stoic, of not. So, Leman Tzion lo echasheh, for the sake of Zion, I will not stop. Stop what? We'll see from the rest of the Nevuah. It does refer to speaking in the sense of pleading to God, but it also may refer to action. Ulaman Yerushalayim lo eshkot. Again, the word eshkot has a double meaning. I won't be silent before God, but it also can mean I won't stop doing things. Lo eshkot, like for example in the book of Ruth that we're going to read. So, it talks about how towards the end of the Megillah that Boaz, lo shakat, he wouldn't stop. He wasn't going to until this was played out the next day. So, Leman Yerushalayim lo eshkot. It also might have a reference, again, if it could be a double entendre, referring both to God and to human beings. The idea of human pi'ulah in tandem with God's pe'ula. So the reference here is the Navi or Am Yisrael saying, "Laman Sion lech Hashem, Laman Yerushalayim loshkot, ad yetzei chanoga tzidka v'yeshuata kilapid yivar," until it's tzedakah v'yeshuata. Again, the parallel. Until it's justice, which means its redemption and its salvation, will burn bright. Kilapid yivar. V'ra'u goyim tzidkeich. All the world will see your redemption, your Yeshua. V'chom lachim kvodech, v'korei lach shem chadash. You will be called by a new name. Asher pi Adonai yikavenu. That God is the one who will determine that name. So again, you have the theme of the new name. We had it in the previous chapter. And now here again, the connective tissue that God will give new names. And again, new names, of course, reflects a new status. New names reflects a new period in history. New names refers to who's in charge and what it signifies, right? We know from, the in a sad way, in the Book of Kings, when certain kings, their name is changed by the dominant superpower. Mitzrayim changes the name of this one to that. Bavel changes the name of Matanya to Tzidkiyahu, etc., to show dominance. So here God is going to change the name, but again, it shows God's obviously control, but it also shows the idea of a new stage in history is going to start. A new stage in history is going to start. And again, we continue. V'hayita ateret tiferet biyad Adonai. We continue the theme of the pe'er, of the glory, just like on top of the chatan, but now we make it even more explicit. Vayita ateret, like the word atara, and ateret is a crown. You'll be a glory crown in the hand of God. Utsnif melucha b'chaf Elohayich, and a turban of melucha in the hand of God. Again, the theme that you will now be able to go out with dignity. You will have tiferet, which is connected to the word pe'er. You will have glory. You will be clothed in glory. You'll be wearing the turban, the crown of glory. Utsnif melucha b'chaf Elohayich. And through the hand of God, you will have the tznif melucha, the turban of kingship. And again, the theme of new name. Lo ye'amer lach od azuva, ula artzeich lo ye'amer od shmama. You will no longer be called abandoned. Again, if you remember, we saw a number of times in the book of Yishayahu that Am Yisrael spoke of itself as an abandoned widow. If you go back, right, one of the famous nevuot that we saw, Vatomer Tzion azavani Adonai v'Adonai shchacheni. And Zion said, I've been abandoned by the Lord, and God has forgotten me. Hatishkach. And God responded, Hatishkach isha ula. Has God forgot? Can a mother forget its child? Gam ela tishchachak nochi lo eshkachech. Here it was the theme of a mother and a child, which is one model. And here already we had the idea of Si'i Savi Einachri Kulam Nikbetzulach Chai Hashem Ki Kulam Ka'adi Tilbashi Ut Kashrim Kakala. So you will wear them like a kala, like wears her finery at the moment of redemption. And now we come back. Here it's once again. We also had it, for example, in chapter 54, which we learned in chapter 54, when Zion spoke of itself. Rania kara lo yalada, the barren woman, pitzchi rini v'tzali lo chala, ki rabim b'nei shomema mi b'nei be'ula. there will be, right? That's what she feels. She feels that there's more children of destruction, of desolation than their children. So God says, no, you're going to have to open up because there's going to be so many people coming back. And in that context, he says, Ki isha azuva v'atzuvat ruach kra'ach Adonai. God had once called you an abandoned woman, a woman of atzuvat ruach, a woman of sadness of spirit. Berega katon azavtich, I abandoned you in a moment. Uberachamim gdolim akabtzech, in great, great, rachamim, I will bring you back. B'shetzev ketzev hisarti b'nai rega mimech, ubechesed olam richamteich amar golech Hashem. So now, again, we have playing off of that theme, coming back here. We have chapter in 62. L'man Tzion lechshet, etc. Lo ye'amer lach od azuva, ulartzech lo ye'amer od shmama, ki lach yikarei chefetzi ba. You will be called the one who's desired. The opposite of azuva is to be desired. Ula artzech be'ula, and your land will be now called betrothed, be'ula. Ish eshet ba'al. You will have a master, you will have a husband. Ki chafetz Adonai bach, God desires you, va'artzech tiba'el, your land will once again be taken in relationship. And it'll be like the relationship not of mother and child, father and child, but the image here is the image of the restoration of the marital bond. Kiv al bachor betula, just as a young man marries a virgin, yivaluch banayich, your children will come back to you and they will, so to speak, become one with you. Umesos chatan al kala, and the joy that a chatan has when he's with his kala, yasis alayich Elohayich, God will also be joy. So here it began with sosasis ba'Adonai in the end of the previous chapter. I will take joy in the Lord. And now we have the reality, not the reality, but we have the fact that it ends this with Ki yiv'al bachor betula, yasis alayich Elokayich. So God will be joyously, and God will be the one who will be misos chatan al kala, yasis alayich Elokayich. Just like there is the joy of a chatan and the kala, so too the joy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the joy about you. Misos chatan al kala, yasis alayich Elohayich. So that's the God part, and now it continues with the human. Again, so there's this kind of subtle undercurrent here of the God part and the human part. Al chomotayich Yerushalayim mifkadeti shomrim kol hayom v'chol halayla. Right? It's also very famous because it became a song. So on your chomot, I will now appoint shomrim kol hayom v'chol halayla. Tamid lo yechashu. They will always be speaking, always be acting. Leman Sion lo echasheh, referring to the prophet, probably. And now it's expanded where God says, again, and if you take this to mean God, so then here we have the expansion to human beings. If you take this to refer to the prophet, Leman Sion lo echasheh, so now it's not just the prophet, but he's going to establish a core of shomrim on the chomot. Now, again, it has a double meaning. Number one is the literal shomrim. The return to the land of Israel is not going to be simple. We know from the book of Ezra, we know from the book of Nehemiah, that there were many people who did not look favorably upon the return of the exiles to Judea. And there were people who attacked them, and there were people who wanted to see evil done to them. And so literally, I'm going to establish a defense system. But in addition, tamid lo yechashu, they will never be silent. Hamazkirim et Adonai al dami lachem. Those who will be entrusted to mention, to constantly remind God literally, symbolically, to constantly mention and say about Am Yisrael and the fact that it had suffered and now is returning and wants to return. Al dami lachem, don't be silent. V'al titnu dami lo ad yichonein, until God establishes ad yasim et Yerushalayim tila ba'aretz. Again, in the early years, the return was not simple, and there were those who wanted to undermine it, and it continued even in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. There were people who did not want to see the Jewish return to the land of Israel succeed. Nishba Adonai b'yamino b'zroa uzo. God swears the reversal of the Churban, the reversal of the Tochacha, of the reproof that we find in the Bible. Nishba Adonai b'yamino b'zroa uzo. God swears by his right hand, again reminding us of the Shirat Hayam, of God's great power that was manifest in Egypt. Yemincha Adonai nedari bakoach, yemincha Adonai tirat soyev, ubizroa, and here ubizroa uzo. Im etain et deganech od machal loivayich. So God promises that he will no longer allow the nations of the world to simply scoop up all of your produce, which is one of the klalot, one of the curses that is explicitly mentioned in the book of Vayikra and the book of Devarim as part of what's going to happen when there's the great punishment. So, but now it's going to be reversed. Nishba Hashem b'yamino b'zroa uzo, im etain et deganech od ma'achal lo'ivecha. V'im yishtu b'nei necharti roshech asher yagata bo. If your food, God swears that your food will no longer be taken by others, by your enemies, and if v'im yishtu b'nei nechar, if foreigners will drink your wine and take it away from you, the wine that you worked on, ki me'asvav yochlu, only those who gather it, meaning who worked on it, v'hilalu et Hashem, and praise the Lord, umikabtzav, those who've come close, who've come back, yishtu b'chatzot kodshi, they will drink my wine in chatzot kodshi, in the precincts of the holy. And again, so you have here this first nevuah, which again has the themes of being called a new name, as I said a couple of times. Yikarei lach chefetzi ba ulartzeich be'ula. There's a town in Israel called Chefetzi ba till today. Ulartzeich be'ula, because God now desires you. We now have the second of the nevuot in this context, which is the specific call to push those who have not come back to Zion or hesitant to come back to Zion, to push them to make it and to do it. Ivru b'she'arim panu derech ha'am. So go from place to place in the gates, and it is encourage them. Clean out the path. Solu hamasila. Clear out the path. Saklume even harimune salamim. So clear out the path. And again, the human activity here. Ivru b'she'arim. It's not simply that God is going to do everything. You have to do it yourself. You have to clear the paths. You have to get everything ready. You have to harimunes. You have to put up a banner and get everybody stirred up to go. And again, this is a little different. We've had this idea, this trope of solu, but there it was God saying, where God said, Kol Korei Bamidbar, and where is it? Solu. I thought it was here. Okay, just 1 second. In this context, yeah, at the beginning of chapter 40, when we had started the whole thing, Kol Korei Bamidbar, a voice calls out Panu derech Hashem. Clear out a path for God. So there it was for God. Here it's for human beings. Here it's for human beings to get ready and to go up to Jerusalem. Again, so that's slow little change. We also had it in Nun Zayin, I think. We had I wrote that down. Right. We had it in Perek. Excuse me. We had it in Perek Nun Zayin. Va'amar solu panu derech harimu michshol miderech ami. So this theme comes back to us here, but again, it's the human, not God, which was at the beginning. Now the human beings have to, clear a path and start moving. In this second nevuah, ivru b'sharim panu derech Hashem solu som silas saklu me'even. Get rid of all of the stones that are in the way. Harimu nei salamim. Hine Hashem hishmiya el kitzei haaretz. God has declared, Imru lebat Zion hine yishech ba hine scharo ito puloto lefanav. Say to Bat Zion, God is coming with his reward and he's coming with his actions. So get on the train. And once again, the theme of, and that's the connective tissue to the previous nevuah, v'kar'u lahem am hakodesh. The people will now be called not Am Yisrael, but Am HaKodesh, Ge'ulei Adonai, the redeemed of the Lord, V'lach Yikareh, and you, to the land, to Jerusalem, you will be called Dirusha, sought after, Ir Lo Ne'ezava, the city that has not been abandoned. Again, the theme of Vatomer Tzion Azavani Hashem. Zion said, I've been abandoned by God. That's all reversed here in this nevuah. The rabbis continued into Perek Samach Gimel, and the Haftorah continued, describing this context of Am Yisrael getting ready. Am Yisrael should get themselves ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. Again, maybe this is right after Koresh has taken over from Bavel, right after Cyrus. We don't know exactly. So now the final part of this is a vision of the fact that God is going to have to step in and unfortunately confront the enemies, because there's a certain quality here that we hear that there are those, so to speak, who need to learn the lesson. And there are those who need to be put in their place. So the Navi speaks of, he sees and he looks out and he sees, again, it's a metaphor, it's an imagery that it's as if he sees God coming. Mizeh ba me Edom, chamutz bgadim. Who do I see coming from Edom? Edom is right on the east, the southeast. Who is it that is coming up from Edom? Chamutz bgadim, whose clothing, whose uniform is chamutz. It's, in this context, chamutz does not mean pickles. Chamutz, in this context, refers to chamutz bgadim mi botzra. Now, the word chamutz, again, in this context, chamutz bgadim is a reference again that to the color, that it is colored. The begadim are colored, probably the red color. So mizeh ba me Edom, it's a play here. There's a lot of playing here. Who is coming up from Edom, which of course is rooted in the word red? Chamutz begadim, whose clothing is saturated with red. Mi Botzra, from Botzra. Botzra is a city, but it's also a play on word. Botzer, of course, refers to when you harvest the grapes, and a lot of the juice of the grapes comes out and stains the clothing. So mizeh ba me Edom, Edom, of course, having the connotation of red and dam and blood. Chamutz bgadim mibotzra, whose clothing is soaked with blood, mibotzra, from the crushing of the grapes, which of course is symbolic of the crushing of the enemies. Zehadur bilvusho, tzo'eh berov kocho, ani medaber bitzdaka, rav lo shiel. So God responds, and he says, that I am wearing these clothes. Ani medaber, because I have spoken in the act of tzedakah, of Yeshua. I've taken on the enemies. Madua adom lilvushecha. You ask, okay? You ask, why are my clothing red? Uvgadecha kidorech bagat, and your clothing are like someone who has been working in the gat, the wine press. So God says, Pura darachti levadi. I came from the place. Pura darachti levadi. I was walking. Umeamim enish. Ve'edrechem be'api. I smashed them in my anger. Ve'ermisem, and I crushed them b'chamati. Ve'yez nitzcham al bgadai. V'chol mabushai egalti. The yez in this context here means the juice, the wine. Yein nitzcham al b'gadi, and the wine of being able to master them, to defeat them, the nitzachon, is on my clothing, and all my clothing is egaalti, gaol bidam. It's been soaked in blood. Ki yom nakam belibi, ushnat gulai ba, because it's a day of revenge, a day of taking justice. Ushnat gulai ba, and the year of redemption has come. So again, the play on the word eg alti, which is a reference to be soaked, and shnat geulai ba, the year of redemption. Va'abit ve'ein ozer, God says no one else was there to help you. V'eshtomein ve'ein somech, v'atoshal izroi v'chamati hi smachtani. Va'avus amim be'api, and God says that he basically, I crushed the nations in my anger. Va'ashkareim b'chamati, va'ashkareim b'chamati, and I destroyed them with my anger. Ashakreim b'chamati. Also, another interpretation from the word lish of shikorut. I made them drunk. Again, the wine imagery. I make them drunk, silly. Va'orid la'aretz nitzcham. So this is the way it ends. So the Yeshua of Hashem is not something that happens without any pain and suffering and any price to pay. So with this, we close this part. Amir Tzashem, as I said, we'll close early tonight. I'm very tired. Next week, we will do the Nevuah of Perek Samach Gimel. And I'm saying we'll finish Samach Gimel and probably do Samach Dalid as well. And then, again, like I said, we'll see how far we get, how many more lessons we have. We'll be able to go a little bit more deeper in the next few chapters. The last chapter of 66 is the famous Haftorah that we read on Rosh Chodesh, when Shabbat comes out on Rosh Chodesh. So we've covered most of the Haftorot that we say from Parshat, from Sefer Yishayahu. Wish everybody a great Shabbos and continued learning. And let's again hope for the best for the hostages and for Medina Israel. All the best, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.